At any given moment, there's over 1 billion surveillance cameras actively recording worldwide, and amidst the countless hours of mundane daily life, silly moments and small accidents, there's a small percentage of incredibly awful and unnerving things that are caught on these cameras. Many of them you've probably seen on Reels or X, but today I'm going to discuss a small subset of disturbing CCTV footage that almost nobody has seen before. I'll tell you everything, but as usual, let's get into the backstories first. With just a phone and an internet connection, two people from completely different walks of life can forge a connection that feels as real as any in-person one. For a 25-year-old man named Lim, a Cambodian national working in Thailand, this is exactly what happened. Through the screen of his phone, he fell deeply in love with a 24-year-old woman named Mias, who was living in Cambodia. The relationship flourished over the span of 2 years, built on daily messages, video calls, and shared dreams together. They talked about their future a lot, like where they would live, the life they'd build together, and the love that they thought was unbreakable. But for Lim, there was always one missing piece. Though their relationship felt real in every sense, and he was even said to be sending money back to her, he'd never once met Mias in person, and he wanted this to change. This social media relationship just wasn't enough for him. He wanted to bridge the gap between their online love and reality, and to finally stand face to face with the woman he had devoted himself to for, at this point, nearly 2 years. So, with a heart full of hope, he left Thailand and traveled back to Cambodia to meet Mias for the first time. But when he arrived, his excitement quickly turned to confusion. Mias seemed nervous and hesitant, like she was hiding something, and we don't know exactly how, but Lim's worries would end up being completely correct. He would find out a devastating truth that he had no idea about this entire time. Mias was already married, and not only that, but she also had children, an entire life she had never once mentioned in the 2 years they'd spent together. For Lim, the weight of this betrayal was absolutely unbearable. The woman he had loved, the future he had envisioned, everything he thought was real had been nothing but a lie this whole time. This man had left his job, traveled across countries, and allegedly sent back a lot of money, all for someone who had never been honest with him. And the more he thought about it, the more the anger inside of him grew, to a point that, as bad as his situation was, it was going to become much, much worse. On April 20th of 2024, this resent reached a breaking point in Lim. He traveled to Mias' home in the area of Cambodia where she lived with her family, and surveillance footage captured what happened next. Lim entered the residence and everything quickly turned into chaos. He confronted Mias, demanding answers, demanding to know why she had lied to him for so long, but the anger soon turned much worse. Lim pulled out a sharp object that he had brought with him, and yeah, there was nothing she could do. She defended herself momentarily and tried to flee, but the situation was just too severe, and within seconds, Mias was no longer with us. For her, there was essentially no time to escape after the initial rush and no time for anyone to intervene, although people would quickly show up. And the original plan when he went there was that he was going to be next, but didn't work. He realized how difficult it was, and so he was hospitalized, and he did express a ton of remorse, but yeah, zero excuse for this. This story is just horrible in every single way. It's a chilling reminder of the dark side of online relationships and relationship betrayal in general. Still, there's no excuse for these actions. It turns a net negative into an even greater one. A 2-year romance ended in a heinous crime, regret, and a family changed forever. In the early hours of October 28, 2024, a family in Markham, Ontario experienced a harrowing ordeal that abruptly disrupted the tranquility of their home. At around 4 a.m., while they were obviously asleep, the homeowner was awakened by an unusual noise, a sound that he initially attributed to his kitten causing something downstairs. However, he just sort of had this feeling that something wasn't right, and so he ventured downstairs to check what was going on. And as he got down there, he was confronted by 5 intruders armed with hammers and a blade. This man had some expensive vehicles in his garage, and the intruders started demanding that he went and grab the keys for the Ferrari. At some point, 2 of the suspects attempted to ascend the stairs towards the bedroom where his wife and children were hiding and calling the police, and the homeowner intervened, redirecting them to his office on the main floor so they could grab the car keys. Complying with their demands, he handed over the keys and opened the garage door for them. Noticing that there was also a white BMW SUV blocking the Ferrari, the intruders insisted on obtaining the BMW's keys as well. Once again, the homeowner complied and the suspects fled, obviously taking both vehicles. This was all caught on home CCTV, and unlike some of the others in this compilation, it's pretty high quality. As mentioned previously, during this ordeal, the homeowner's wife secured herself and their children in an upstairs bedroom and contacted 911. And because of their quick reaction, police arrived very quickly after the suspects had fled. And even better, subsequent investigations led to the recovery of the stolen vehicles. The BMW was found near Yonge and Eglinton, and the Ferrari was located near Highway 50 and Fogle Road in Brampton. And as it turns out, these kids were very young, they were teenagers. The three who were caught were aged 15, 16, and 17, and were found in another stolen car, to which they were arrested and charged with armed robbery, possession of property obtained by crime over $5,000, and disguise with intent. At the time of the incident, the 17-year-old was on probation and the 15-year-old was under a release order for unrelated offenses. Two additional suspects, described as males between 16 and 20 wearing dark clothing, remain at large. Based on the fact that Canada is pretty terrible with this stuff, I'm going to take a guess and say that these kids got a slap on the wrist, or at least less than they deserve, and given they are minors, I have not been able to find an update on this. People think it's likely that these kids were either commissioned or coerced to do this by adults and that they're obviously involved with organized crime, though this isn't confirmed. And I'm just going to say it, this sort of crap should be taken way more seriously than it is here. This incident just shows the importance of staying on top of this kind of stuff and the need for robust security measures to protect residents from such criminal acts, which unfortunately can happen anywhere at any time. Again, thank God it wasn't worse than it was, but this still had to scare this young family, so yeah, screw these guys. The story begins on March 26, 2013 in Shenzhen, China. The streets of this specific district were alive with the usual evening business. Workers hurried home, cars inched forward in traffic, and many people were outside rushing around. Among these pedestrians was a gentleman named Yang, a 25-year-old security guard at a nearby luxury complex in the heart of the city. Yang had spent the day on duty, patrolling the premises, exchanging nods with residents, and ensuring everything was in order. He'd actually previously served as a soldier before moving south in search of new opportunities, so although it wasn't really his thing to be working at a hotel, he was just grateful to be making some movement in the right direction. Life in Shenzhen was very fast-paced, and while the long hours weren't exactly easy, the job provided a very steady paycheck. So on this day, as the sun dipped lower, Yang eventually left work and started to head back home. Part of his walk home required him to cross the northern section of the complex, which was a well-worn route and one he'd taken countless times before. But this time something was going to happen to Yang that neither him nor anybody in the vicinity could have ever seen coming. As he stepped along this path, something beneath him shifted and without warning the entire path gave way. A massive 16.5-foot wide, 65-foot deep sinkhole suddenly opened up, immediately swallowing Yang whole. Chunks of asphalt and concrete crashed downwards, sending up a cloud of dust, and we can see all of this as it was caught on a nearby security camera that was patrolling the facility. The path that existed just seconds before and that Yang had taken many times was now a gaping void, plunging nearly 6 stories deep into the earth, and poor Yang was right inside of it. Nearby witnesses immediately froze in shock, and for a brief moment there was only silence. But the frantic calls for help quickly came, along with some people quickly bringing over pylons to zone off the area. It's unclear as to how soon people realized that Yang was actually in there, but it appears that some saw it happen or heard him as he yelled for help because emergency services were quickly called. Remember, it's a 65-foot hole that would be incredibly dark and unstable, so if someone didn't see him, it could have been much longer. Once the rescue teams arrived, they assessed the stability of the ground before carefully working their way down. And horribly, it would be hours before they managed to retrieve Yang. He was rushed to a nearby treatment center, but unfortunately, it was far too late by then. He was formally pronounced deceased on arrival. Although reports suggest that the exact cause of the sinkhole remains uncertain, a leading theory points to tremors from a nearby construction site weakening the ground, combined with the area being built up too fast and people being ignorant to important details as a result. The site had already drawn criticism from Shenzhen's Housing and Construction Bureau due to its crew frequently working illegally into the hours of the morning, sometimes as late as 3 or 4 a.m. Folks in the building had repeatedly voiced complaints about the disturbances, but their concerns appear to have been disregarded. Following the incident, Shenzhen officials temporarily halted all construction activities at the site to assess the stability of the surrounding area. So yeah, some suspected construction flaws, others pointed to underground erosion, but one thing was undeniable. The city had been built faster than the ground could hold, and on that evening, the earth had finally given in. Rest in peace to this poor man. He had his whole life ahead of him, and no one should have to experience something like this at such a young age. Unfortunately, this type of randomness is around us all the time, and sometimes things like this just happen. The morning of February 28, 2025 in Vila Velha, Brazil was like any other. The streets were waking up, people were heading to work, and all the young ones were getting ready for school. It was a Friday, and so people were in a bit more of a positive mood, but for the most part, it was just a routine day. For 48-year-old Stanley Stein, an experienced Jiu Jitsu instructor, the morning routine was pretty simple. He'd drop his kids off at his mother's house so they could get to school, then he would leave on foot and go about his day, get to work, all that fun stuff. Stanley was pretty well known in the community. As a Jiu Jitsu professor, he spent years training students in self-discipline, resilience, and of course, the art of defense. He was the kind of guy who believed in self-control, de-escalation, and in being prepared for any threat that may come. But sadly, no amount of training could have ever prepared him for what was about to happen to him on this morning. At 7:32 a.m., Stanley stepped out of his mother's house onto the quiet sidewalk of her neighborhood. Maybe he was thinking about the next class or what he had planned for the day, but either way, he was completely unaware that at this point in time, his life had less than 30 seconds left. Just a few places down, a man sat motionless on a bench. He'd been there for some time, blending into the background as if he was waiting for something. To anyone going by, it would just look like he was another person waiting for a boss or scrolling through his phone. But he wasn't just waiting, he was watching. Stanley likely didn't even see this man as it was opposite of the direction that he was going, but nonetheless, as he began to walk a few steps forward down the street, this man stood up. He moved with a stealthy but deliberate pace, pulling something out of what looked like a bag, and in an instant, a firearm was raised. Horribly, a few rang out and one made contact with Stanley's neck to where the force threw him off balance. He fell, got up, staggered, still trying to stay on his feet, but after taking a few more steps and fighting against the inevitable, the poor man fell onto the asphalt in the middle of the street. The individual behind this man then hurried away, vanishing into the streets of Vila Velha, but by the time emergency responders arrived, there was sadly nothing that could be done. Stanley was already gone. He was taken to the Legal Medical Institute, and just like that, a man who had dedicated his life to self-defense never even got the chance to fight back. The motive is still unknown as of the writing of the script. No suspects have been arrested and police aren't saying much, but one thing is very clear, this was not random. The way the suspect waited, the way he executed the plan in under 20 seconds and disappeared, this was calculated. Unfortunately, there are theories that this was actually a case of mistaken identity. People think the assailant believed him to be some sort of military police officer or that the guy may have just felt threatened by a potential undercover, but still, nobody knows. And no matter what, it's horribly sad because he has children and family, and this occurred right outside of his mother's place. Somewhere out there, someone knows exactly what happened here, but I would guess that it's highly unlikely we'll ever find out.